Hello everyone, Markus Glovers here today. I welcome you to another session of our Project Management Intelligence Meetup. And we are talking today about intelligent project risk management. And the question, can AI help to uncover the unknown unknowns? So I'm really happy to actually welcome today a very illustrious guest who I will introduce to you in a minute. First of all, I just want to highlight again, and I think we mentioned it already the last time, that our meetup, we obviously want to do that on a monthly basis. And I know we have in the past probably a little bit not as diligent as we should be in terms of having that scheduled, but going forward, we want to actually have that on a monthly basis and have also different topics, which we hope you can help us with if you want to look at certain topics in the context, obviously, of AI in project management or for project management. Please feel free to actually put this into the community forum on meetup.com. Again, we have this just as another reminder who hasn't been or wasn't able to attend the last meetup session. We actually have a kind of different setup right now. We do this always as a live session here on YouTube. In the future, I want to do that actually more on different platforms as well, so including like LinkedIn. But for now, we test that basically out and see how it goes. So I also want to right now introduce my co-host, Nicholas Rohrbach. Hi, Nicholas.
Hey, Marcus.
We have obviously another meetup where we hope to have quite some international audience. So, I mean, everyone who is actually attending on YouTube, just in terms of the logistics, feel free to put any questions that you may have during the meetup, during the session here in the chat window. We try to attend or address those questions while we actually go through. Maybe to start with, you may want to put into the chat where you're actually dialing in from. If you're, because as I said previously, we had quite some international audience. So again, it would be quite interesting to see where you're all dialing in from today. And while you hopefully are doing this, just another logistics about today's session as usual. So, I mean, I mentioned already in terms of questions, please put that into those chat windows, and we try to address those questions as we go. And at the end of the session, so this is a 1 hour long session here, we will also reserve some time and hopefully have that time to address any other questions that you may have. Also, you probably are familiar with already, we did that before. We use some surveys, so some questions to you. We use Mentimeter for this, so we do that again today. We'll give you obviously the instructions there where you have to navigate to and which code you need to use. And we will then hopefully will help us to get some insights also from you and then drive also further this session today. So this is for now what I have. Is there anything from your end, Nicholas, that you want to add maybe and say to the audience?
I mean, the main thing is that we're trying to continue this on a monthly base, and I think it'll be interesting to see how it develops over the next couple of months. The direction we want to try to get some more technical things going as well, but kind of cover off the bases. But yeah, it's going to be fun.
All right. Then, I mean, I don't want to keep everyone waiting. We have obviously our guest who I want to introduce. So, Rüdiger Geist, welcome, Rüdiger, and thank you for actually making some time to talk about project risk management. And so let me just briefly introduce Rüdiger. So that's actually a massive list of information that I can talk about Rüdiger here. Uh, so Rüdiger, he's a PMP, he is a PFMP, so he has several certifications, IPMA level B. He is the managing director of Spirit at PM, which is a Swiss-based consultancy specializing obviously in project management and also coaching, consulting, training in the areas of project and program and portfolio management. He is an associate professor of project management at the University of Applied Sciences here in Zurich, the University of Reykjavik, and the University of St. Petersburg. So quite some knowledge, obviously, sitting there in front of us here. He's also a Swiss representative at the PM University Network. Yeah, as I said, several certifications. So certainly you have quite some knowledge, Rüdiger, and that will be quite helpful and probably not enough to have that in 1 hour to squeeze all that knowledge you have in terms of product risk management out of you. But I'm sure we get quite something from this session today. So welcome again, Rüdiger.
Thank you for your introduction. The video is quite slow. I don't know why, because my internet connection is very fast typically, but hopefully the sound at least is quite clear and no problems we have here. Acknowledged?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Cool.
think the
Yeah,
most important is, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying the sound quality is good, so we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
No clue. The only thing I don't know. I don't have an idea why. So we have to live with, obviously. No problem. Thank you
But
so
I
much.
mean, we hear you loud and clear. That's very important,
That's the
obviously.
most important thing.
So
Yeah.
that's great. So I would like to start off, and I mentioned that before, Mentimeter, and I
Yeah.
actually would like to start off with that. And let me just switch over here. So we want to know from you, the audience, what challenges are you currently experiencing or seeing in project risk management? So you possibly are a project manager yourself, or program manager, or portfolio manager, or in any way involved in projects in your organization. And there are different elements, as you can see here. There are probably many different challenges that you potentially could think of. That's obviously goes in the other section, but maybe you find your challenge here. So I give it a minute, and then let's come back to it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I hope we get some more answers here, but looks like unrealistic expectations for now is the most or the biggest challenge. Is there anything, I mean, Rüdiger, from your experience, and we're obviously talking about project risk management today, um, from your point of view, where you are actually seeing the biggest challenges today in project risk management, does that kind of reflect here your understanding?
No, not necessarily. But this is not necessarily important, because at the end of the day, from my point of view, risk, or let's say uncertainty, is not independently existing. It's always produced through the perspective of those who are looking on. So, and if you have different views on it, from my point of view, it's reflecting more or less the environment people are working in or doing risk management in. I personally, from my perspective, think that one of the major problems at the moment is that we are working with methodologies from the 80s or from the 70s or from the 90s in a world which is no longer as it was 50 or 30 years ago. So I'm not picking on risk management in general, but if we think about uncertain world we are living in, I think what we are using today in terms of methodology for such a kind of world or projects running in that world, maybe we have to adjust one or two small things. Let's say it that way. The idea behind is the distinction between complexity and between a complex and a complicated world. So what we are doing in risk management since ages, and what is, I don't know, given in books like the PMBOK, etc., is, at least in the sixth version of the PMBOK, was more built for a complicated world, not so much for a complex world. And my major criticism at the moment. It's not so much on the methodologies themselves, it's much more on the how it's used.
Okay. I mean, maybe just a quick question, Rudiger, to kind of get this kind of rolling here. I mean, what is your definition of an unknown unknown? I mean, just to set the scene for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good one for me. This is a quite common definition, so it's not really mine. But unknown unknown is seen as uncertainty, and an unknown unknown is not a risk. A risk is a known unknown. So when we talk about, from my point of view, uncertainty is something that really changes our lives since, I don't know, a decade at least. So we have a lot of uncertainty around. And these are things which are not on the radar. If we talk about risk management, you have got your, I don't know, in Excel or wherever, you have your metrics and you have to put in your risk and so on and so on. And you have to think about probability. That's all fine. That's fine if you know what kind of risks are around. But in the world of today, there are so many unforeseeable and there is so many uncertainty that these kind of I don't know, risk metrics do not help any longer, because the problem is not so much to classify the risk or to find an idea about probability and impact. It's much more about to find the risk, to see them, to identify them, to uncover them. So to bring them from the status from unknown unknowns to known unknowns. We have much more unknown unknowns than before or than in the past.
And do you think, I mean, what role do you think human bias plays in risk management?
Yeah, at the end of the day, of course, we are all human beings. And in terms of artificial intelligence, we all hope, I don't want to go too deep and too far into the topic, but of course, we all hope that such technology might help us to how to say it best, to overcome our human problems of being a human. Because at the end of the day, typical human biases, not only human, also cultural oriented, is that we try to avoid uncertainty. For us, uncertainty is something bad, and this is something we have to avoid. And even if we more and more see also opportunities as part of risk management, so it's not only the threatening part, but still we do not like surprises. Yeah, nobody likes surprises, at least in the Western world. Surprises, I'm not talking about getting a present on birthday, of course. Yeah, but surprises are always taken as something is not properly managed. So when a surprise pops up, yeah, it's always you made something wrong because you should have seen it before. Yeah, and if we start with such a view on risk management, or if we start with such a view on uncertainty, we will always face the problem, or the opportunity. Let's call it the problem. We always face the problem that risk is not a kind of an accepted thing, and that unforeseeable things might happen, is seen as a weakness, and this is not true. It's not a weakness at the end of the day. It's only a weakness if you really had signs that something is around and you didn't take care about it. But at the end of the day, we are facing black swans, how they are called, and you had them on your on the screen at the beginning, we are facing surprises every day. So many things are happening we are not prepared for. Nobody have foreseen, or only maybe, I don't know, a handful of scientists you never heard about. Yeah, but beside that, and this is from my point of view, not this is a cultural aspect, not cultural between East and West, cultural in organizations. We have to be much
Yeah.
more open. We have to accept that unforeseeable things will happen, and we have to prepare for it.
I was just going to actually bring that point down, right? Or I
Oh,
guess
I think. Sorry, you were on mute. I didn't hear you properly. Can you please repeat, Nicholas?
I was just that the about organizational cultures, right? How everybody, specifically in the innovative kind of spaces, keep talking about failures are accepted, etc. It kind of goes into the same direction, right? Where you start saying that because of uncertainties, etc., or unknowns are happening and they're becoming more and more common to a certain extent. That it's kind of like you would think that the shifting culture, organizational culture, helps deal with this, but it is actually very interesting.
Yes, up to a certain degree, of course, we can observe stuff like this. Um, working agile in a complex environment for me is active risk management. I'm far away from being a kind of a, how to say it best, methodology muhajin for agile, but in some places, of course, it makes so much sense. But I'm far away from saying you have to take it always. It always makes sense. I'm far away from that. But we have to accept, and for good reasons, that this is active risk management. So there is a kind of a methodology around, especially in software development, where the basic idea is unforeseeable things will happen. The world is fast changing. This is a kind of a pre-assumption for the whole methodology. For me, that's pure risk management. Yeah, but of course, this is only the aspect of the way you are developing, and there is much more than just the development approach. It's an important one, don't take me wrong, but it's not everything. It's not the whole world. It's just the development approach, and I do not see so much beside the development approach nowadays, at least, where this accepting of the uncertainty and to prepared for the uncertainty is really happening between one buzzword, which is called resilience. It's like sustainability. There is no longer any website with the term without the term resilient or sustainability. And don't here again. I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm not picking on resilience, but I don't know, being just to protect myself. This is not nothing proactive. So it deals with it deals with the problem, but it's not proactive. It makes me stronger if something happens. Fine, I'm fine with this. Yeah, but this cannot be the only thing. So how can we always say project managers have to be proactive. So how can we be proactive in terms of risk management in a complex world? Putting us in a tank and waiting for the catastrophe as things like happen, that's resilience. You know? That's resilience. That's fine. Yeah, I'm fine with that. We have to be we need protection. But where is the proactive thing? It deals, as I said, it deals with the issue.
Yeah,
Agree?
Rüdiger, I would agree, right? That we need to be more proactive, right? And there are a lot of talks also about agility and business agility, right? Which I think is kind of that what you meant, right? That instead of being resilient only, we need to become more proactive, right? Um, but I mean, having said that, would you not say that the traditional risk management practices, which obviously also should be to a certain degree proactive, that they're kind of outdated, and especially with this what we always talk about, increasing uncertainty, everything becomes more volatile, etc., and that we definitely require some new thinking, some new approach of some sort. So, like you mentioned, like we cannot be resilient. We need to have some more proactivity. So do you think
I
that
would
we need
say no and
some
yes.
change?
And I said not yes and no, I would say no and yes. So no is for me the first answer, a little bit is the yes. Um, as I already as I already mentioned, I think we have really to divide between complexity and a complex world and a complicated world. Maybe I don't know if you don't know so far, but I assume most of our listeners have heard about a Cynefin model so far. This is a small model. This just explains what the different tasks are different in terms of the environment and the task itself. And two of these major parts of this model is complicated and complex.
Mm.
And a complicated world is not easier or is not harder as a complex world. It's just different. If you build a skyscraper 1,000 meters high, I think we all understand that this is something very, very challenging. Nobody did it before. Then they started in, I think, in Dubai. And but at the end of the day, the basic laws, the basic ideas are the same. Then I don't know a small house somewhere in the mountains because the physics are exactly the same. It's much more complicated. Yeah, so therefore, it's not an easy job. Don't take me wrong, but for a complicated world where we can trust on certain laws, on certain physics, on whatever we know. So there is a cause and there is an effect of the cause. And if we can trust on stuff like this, we are in in a complicated world. And there, the risk management approach, which is still very common and not very new, is fully cool and very, very useful. If we go over to a complex world where prediction of there is no longer, I wouldn't say no longer, but the number of cause and effect stuff is very reduced, so prediction is very hard. Risk management, as we do it for complicated projects, does not work any longer as so much. And the second thing is, from my point of view, and that's why I said yes, a little bit. From my point of view, and you still see in all the methodologies that probability and impact is weighted the same way. So you're and this is the multiplying probability with impact, and the outcome is a kind of a prioritization of your risk. Okay, it's a little bit, you might add some more variables. Okay, fine. But from my point of view, this is something we really have to rethink because from in days like this, even if it's a complicated and not a complex project, I'm quite sure that probability is less important than impact. At the end of the day, if a company, I never really understood why if you have a risk where the whole company might be on risk, so you might get bankrupt. Yeah, why probability should have the same weighting than impact. And from my point of view, especially in that so-called VUCA world we are obviously living in, impact is the more serious thing, not only for the company, not only for the human beings, also for the environment, for the society, etc., etc. So from my point of view, even this, let's say, not outdated risk management approach for complex projects should be adjusted in a way that impact should get a higher priority than probability.
So, I mean, you mentioned impact. So maybe I can actually switch to Mentimeter again and actually ask the question in terms of the effectiveness of project risk management. So there are obviously different factors that could play a role as well and could impact how we actually manage risks and how we drive risk mitigation as well, right? So some elements you have been already mentioned, and let's see what our audience has to say about this. Are there any, I mean, what's your view actually, Rüdiger, right? In terms of, I mean, you mentioned impact, but in terms of the effectiveness of project risk management as we know it, as we apply it, usually, where do you see the
I can see three answers already on the Mentimeter, and the majority is going for organizational culture. From my point of view, that's exactly the point. From those values given here, organizational culture really plays a difference, makes a difference. As I already mentioned at the beginning, where I said it's not only cultural difference between East and West or between religions or whatever. I think the openness for the unforeseeable is not given as much as I would like to. As I would like to see it in organizations. It's, I would not say everywhere, but in a lot of organizations, especially in the management, there is still a kind of a view that something in the project went wrong if something unforeseeable happened. That's still the view. And this is, from my point of view, not accepting that we are living in a complex world or that we are doing complex projects. This is totally fine if you're building, I don't know, a dam. This is totally fine if you're building a house, because from the past, we can learn so much, and we had so much opportunities to collect information, etc., etc. And here it's, from my point of view, also useful, and it makes sense to project learnings into the future. So learnings from the past to project into the future in complicated projects, that's fine. But in a complicated world, what will you predict? What will you learn from the past? Because the past is, we can see it with climate change. Okay, that's maybe not the best example, but it's a good one. We are trying to use the last 120 years, which is nothing, really nothing on weather, but we are measuring weather phenomena since 120 years, and we are trying to predict something from the 120 years into the future. Up to a certain degree, that works. Yeah, but still, there are so many surprises. We have seen all those flooding in Germany. We see, volcanoes that they haven't done since 50 years, or maybe since 200 years. These are still surprises. If we would have looked at the last 20,000 years, fine, okay, we might have a different view on it. But if something is complicated, if it's not predictable, we have to prepare for for something we haven't thought about, we haven't expected. Nobody organizations do not work that way. So
I mean, I find the response is relatively interesting, right? I mean, I think organizational culture is one of the ones that, we can influence, and is something that kind of is changing to a certain extent. But it's interesting to see that nobody chose like cognitive biases, right? I mean, I guess it would be the minimizing of certain biases, right? To the benefits it could potentially provide. But I guess we can potentially talk about that in a little bit, right?
I believe we have lost Rüdiger. At least his picture is frozen. Rüdiger, can you still hear us? Doesn't seem to be the case. So we hope that we can get him back in a minute or quick. First of all, I mean, thanks for the responses to the audience. So it seems to be very clear on the organizational culture piece. So maybe in the meantime, while hopefully we get Rüdiger back on the line, I would just.
I mean, maybe the question to you: what would you have chosen on here? I mean, when you look at it.
Yeah, I would be twisted. I mean, organizational culture I certainly see as as one of these items. Oh, give me just a moment. I see Rüdiger is joining again.
Mr. Rudiger.
Yes. So I mean, I would have organizational culture. Certainly, I think is a critical element, but it goes kind of, in my view, kind of pretty much hand in hand with the level of uncertainty. So kind of you need to actually adjust the culture in a way, or the organizational culture, to actually account for uncertainty. And the uncertainty is increasing, and many actually think that uncertainty, yeah, it's like Rüdiger mentioned, like the VUCA world, and some people even associate that with the pandemic, etc. That's in my view that's wrong, right? I mean, the level of uncertainty will further increase, and that's the new normal. It just need to adjust to it, and the culture needs to basically yeah, adapt to this new reality, basically. So, I mean, you can basically say, I would agree with the response here from the audience, because that is kind of what is the underlying key element for the effectiveness of project risk management, right? And the impact thereof. So if it's uncertainty, if it's volatility, or any other elements from the VUCA world, right? The organizational culture is basically key that needs to address those items. That's my view. Hi, Rüdiger. Happy to have you back. We just don't seem to have his.
I don't think the audio is working. You might be on mute. We see you.
Yeah, let me try to get him in again. Yeah, maybe Rüdiger, if you could just dial in again, if you don't mind. Okay. So, what's your view, Nicholas?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear. I mean, uncertainty, the level of uncertainty is going to just continue increasing, right? And it's not going to get smaller. It's just going to get bigger and bigger, right? And I think the organizational culture is a thing that is somehow tangible that we can kind of influence. But I'm a little bit. It's interesting to see that nobody chose like the biases, right? Because I biases somehow are going to be.
Let's go back to this.
How do you want
So
to?
I'm back. Sorry, I don't know what happened.
Not a problem, Rudiger. But I
Okay.
think bias.
I don't know what you still have heard what I said, but my last sentence was something like cognitive bias is also part of organizational culture. So because we are all humans,
Yeah.
yeah, and we have a strange tendency to overestimate and underestimate. Um, I remarkable wise, it was very interesting. I had such a discussion together with my daughter, and I asked her, "What do you think? How high is the probability that if 23 people are in the same room, that two have birthday on the same day?" Yeah, and those who know, Marcus is smiling. He knows the example, I assume, from Kahneman. She was very surprised when I said 50%. Yeah, but that's the case. So we are underestimating events if they are not very present in our minds, and we overestimate events that are very present in our mind, or where we have heard about so much in the news. For example, another example from Kahneman is the comparison of people who were killed by sharks and by coconuts, and the number is something like 1 to 100. So about 100 people more, 100 times more people are killed every year by coconuts falling from the trees on their heads compared to shark attacks. Yeah, but if you would ask people on the street, I would bet on that they go for shark attacks, because nobody is hearing in the news from falling coconuts. This,
Yeah.
don't take me wrong, this is anything but, I don't know, criticism on press. It's just a psychological bias, or just a psychological phenomena. And of course, this is influencing the way we are doing risk management too.
But I mean,
Yeah.
do you see that, or do you agree that the uncertainty is increasing or has increased over the years, and that
Yes,
there's basically
definitely.
a growing gap, kind of, right, between how we actually used to manage project risks and then this uncertainty piece, right, which is kind of, as you said, right? I believe
Yeah,
that that's kind
absolutely.
of.
And we all, I think we all sense it, even without any, I don't know, scientific numbers, although they are available. But um, just just think about your first mobile phone. Yeah, I can remember mine. It was a Nokia. And you could do one thing with it. You can phone with it. You could phone with it. And there was something space like, I don't know, 30 telephone numbers you could have in a kind of a register there. And I'm not referring so much on what kind of computers we have now in our hands, but much more on the producer. Yeah, Nokia went bankrupt, I don't know, not long ago, and afterwards they were. I know that they are producing phones again, but in the meantime, they produced rubber shoes. Yeah, and this can happen. Companies like this, with such a power, they disappear more or less within some months. I recently read an article where the question was raised: how many companies from the first Forbes list, 200, no, so 100 years ago, how many companies of those are still existing? There were 400 on the list. Four. That's what is remaining from 100 years ago. And most of them did not went out between 1920 and 1950. That happened in the last 20 years. And companies which are now, I don't know, ruling the world, you haven't heard about 20 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about how old is Amazon. Think about how old is Google. Think about how old is Microsoft. Okay, Microsoft a little bit older, but companies, huge companies, most of them were founded in the last 20 years. Yeah, and think about how technology changed our life. And of course, everything, all the product cycles are much shorter. Yeah, it took 2 years up to the point that a new generation of mobile phones came up at this time. Yeah, if you do not produce one a year at least, you miss the whole Christmas business. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
billions. So yeah, it's just try to imagine, or just try to look at that. And of course, everything is faster, everything is more complex, not everything, but most things, and it's going, and I do not see any end so far.
So having this in mind, and I'm sorry, I hear some echo here on my end. But having this in mind, with everything goes much faster, right? And obviously, referring to the title of the session here, right? With how AI potentially can actually resolve this dilemma that we're having with unknown unknowns, etc. Right? I mean, what is your view in terms of, we hear about data analytics, artificial intelligence, etc. I mean, would you see that actually is something where you would see real massive benefits, or something that you would rather see as something that is kind of difficult to apply in the project management area? Having in mind, obviously, the complexity level, also in terms of uncertainty, etc.
At the end of the day, artificial intelligence is using data. And typically, this data is from the past. Okay, we can discuss how much from the past. It might be from yesterday, it might be from a year ago, whatever. And in predicting the future from data or information from the past does not help us, from my point of view, to avoid black swans. Because the character of a black swan is that you could not foresee it, or only some experts. Yeah, but in general, you cannot foresee it. That's more or less the definition. It's not my definition. It's the definition of the term black swan. And I would have doubts if artificial intelligence would help us to uncover black swans. But I have no doubts that artificial intelligence is able to uncover or to show us patterns based on patterns. So it helps us to not oversee known unknowns that we were personally not aware of or the organization is not aware of. So I would say, yes, it helps. It might help. I'm quite sure that it helps. But as I said, my expectation, it helps at all these areas where humans might not be perfect. Yeah, so you can avoid these biases, for example. Yeah, because this data is not kind of judging wrong at the end of the day, as we do in any predictions of probabilities, as I mentioned with two examples. And here, I think it could be very, very helpful. But as already mentioned, I still have doubts that the data from the past can help us to foresee black swans. But black swans so far are a problem because they do not happen very often, but typically they have a very, very huge impact. Yeah, and therefore, keep in mind, as I said, I think we should weight impact much higher than probability. And this is also a kind of a result of those kind of thoughts. So maybe I'm sure it will help us, but we have to combine it with other kind of, I don't know, ideas, methodologies, things like that.
But wouldn't you say that, when we say unknown unknowns, I mean, that's my view, you may have a different one, that black swans are definitely part of unknown unknowns, I would say, but it's not, unknown unknowns is not the same as black swans, right? There's more to it, right? And so black swans, I would agree that even AI cannot do much about this, right? But there are other unknown unknowns which are kind of foreseeable or could be foreseeable, let's put it this way, but we are just not capable of doing that. And that's why it's basically labeled as a black swan, because it's outside of our own perception, our
That's
awareness.
exactly the point, Marcus. When we started this discussion, you might remember that I said uncertainty is something that is related to those looking at this uncertainty. So what might be an uncertain thing for me, not necessarily is an uncertain thing for you. And I would be very happy, and I really believe that AI can help me as a person to overcome all my personal weaknesses in looking on uncertainty, or in other words, on unknown unknowns. I think this is not the official definition, but for me, a black swan is an unknown unknown where a huge majority of human beings were in the same situation, not seeing it coming. Yeah, so it's a kind of a special form, as you said, as from an unknown unknown, but it's so important, although it's very rare, because the outcome is typically very, very important. But at the end of the day, for all the other unknowns where not necessarily it's a black swan, I would agree. Yes, it could help. It can help me a lot. But what I'm taking out of that patterns, what I'm taking out of the suggestions of artificial intelligence, assuming there is a software helping me here, would maybe not the same between us. Yeah, maybe for something would be for you would be very obvious, and I would have overseen it all the way around. Yeah, so therefore, um, this is a very interesting aspect and a very interesting thing to look at what's possible there and what's coming up, um, and I'm sure in the past there are patterns we haven't seen, and I'm sure because of the pure number of information and data available, we are not even able to go through or to process it. Yeah, which software kind of do perfectly and fast.
Well, that's
And of
the
course, there
interesting
could be a
thing.
very, very good support.
That's kind of the
But
interesting
still,
thing. What I was
sorry, one sentence, just one last sentence, Nicholas. At the end of the day, even if it's uncovered, there is still a person to make a judgment on how important it is and how to deal with it. Yeah, I would not.
yeah.
That's not criticism. That's great. Yeah,
Well, I totally agree. I think there's always going to be a human in project management, in risk management. I mean, I think where AI definitely provides the power, and this is kind of why I was a little bit, before on that Mentimeter, kind of looking at the component, because I kind of look at it as, kind of one of the drivers. If you look at the volumes of data being produced, right, for a human to actually look at all this data and try to actually really identify what the real problem is, right, is very, very difficult, right? So then the intuition kicks in. Oh, I've seen this before, or maybe it's this, and you might actually overlook the real problem. You go through the decision-making process, and you actually might come to a partially correct conclusion or a wrong conclusion. And I think this is very, where AI and data analytics, advanced statistics, etc., can definitely provide value, right? And I think it is the future, and that married with enhancements on the methodology side and the organizational culture and these types of things, that's going to be the difference maker, right? But I don't think I don't think it's going to be organizational culture over without technology, or technology without the culture component. I think it's going to be married of both, and at the end of the day, there's going to be a person involved, right?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, of course. And artificial intelligence, I think, do not is cannot be the main driver for changes organizational culture. Um, it might convince people that something has to change, etc., etc. But as I already said, I think this could be really very helpful in uncover patterns, especially in uncovering patterns where, for whatever reasons, our human brains, or my human brain in this case, would have overseen something. Yeah, and this is, at the end of the day, I still have to take a decision how serious to take, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, just to give me a kind of a hint, hey, look, there is something. Take a look on it. Yeah, don't forget to take a look on it. I'm not sure if it really is serious, but it looks strange. Please take a look at it. This is something we are waiting all the day for. Nowadays, typically, it's a kind of a message from a colleague or from somebody in the project team saying, "Oh, my intuition says that this looks strange. I don't cannot say exactly why, but let's take a look at it." Yeah, and from my point of view, artificial intelligence is not taking the place of what I described at the moment. It's something on top. So there is something human, there is intuition, where we, if you talk about brain research, maybe have even a kind of an explanation what it is. But at the end of the day, it's both. It's best of both worlds. Yeah, there is still the human factor intuition. There is something that helps human beings not to oversee or to get a hint on, hey, take a look at. I would love to get this. When do you have it?
And do you, just another, like, just from kind of thinking about this, we kind of talked a little bit. I don't want to jump into the deep end on statistics and AI and stuff like, but like if you look at Matrix, right, for let's say risk management, do you think there's certain ones that organizations, how do you say, could focus on, or could I guess, implement or establish or elaborate on,
Look,
given kind of the complexity or the complicated and the complex world?
um, let me maybe you're a little bit disappointed about my answer, but at the end of the day, for me, metrics is nothing else. But this is not bad news. This is good news. Metrics is nothing else than a way to present to me or maybe to others information and to interpret data up to a certain degree at least. But at the end of the day, for me, the more important question is, what are you doing with it? Yeah, and you can ignore it, you can take it for serious, whatever might be possible. But at the end of the day, in terms of risk management, it's always about prioritization. You never have enough resources, and when I'm talking about resources, I'm not only talking about human resources, financials, etc., to to cover everything which is on risk. And I'm not talking about, at the moment, I'm talking much more about known risks, of course. So at the end of the day, it's about prioritization and everything that gives you a right view on the importance of risks, for me, is good metrics. We can
Yeah.
discuss what this might be. But one thing for sure, for me, is really outdated, and I mentioned it several times. Um, Weighting probability and impact the same way does not make sense any longer, because nobody even thinks that way. Yeah, if there is a 5% probability that somebody is killed or injured, no, let's not don't take that something serious. Let's take a 5% probability of an impact of a million. If you do according to the handbooks, that would be something like 50,000. If there is you see my point? If there is a 50% probability of 100,000, we would treat it the same according to the handbooks, but we don't do that. Because a 5% probability of a million you might not afford. Yeah, you see my point. So it's not the same. So therefore, that's my main point in terms of how it's done today, still done today. But everything that helps to give you a clue of the importance of a risk is useful always. Yeah, and in terms of prioritization, there is I heard it's from a Russian saying. I'm not sure if it's true, but it says something: prepare for the worst, the best will take care of itself. Yeah, and if this is your motto, if this is the view you have, then everything that supports this idea, for me, is a useful metric.
Yeah.
I think we should not. I understand why so many Excel sheets are around, because you want to compare risk between project and so on and so on. And I fully agree with these approaches. But at the end of the day, the question should always be, what is the worst case scenario? Can we stand a worst case scenario? Sometimes I'm sitting together with my project teams and I ask them in risk management sessions, from your point of view, what will never happen? And this is something you should take care of. Because at the end of the day, this is something everybody assumes we don't have to take care. And these are the
Yeah.
blind spots in organization. And they have this is where the door is open for all those nice black swans to get into the organizations, where everybody assumes this will never happen. And,
Exactly.
and if, yeah, sorry, please go on.
I'm just gonna kind of add a follow on. If you, I mean, if you, we talked about kind of what an unknown is, uncertainties, kind of went through the different topics. And now, if you would kind of put on the end of this um, session, or kind of just look back and say, for you in an ideal world, or for you, I mean, where do you see the future of project risk management, basically? How do you, what do you think has to happen, kind of, um, what do you think it's going to look like in the future?
It's more about mindset than, I don't know, technology or methodology. And I think something that will play a big role, and up to a certain, yeah, we can see it already a little bit in agile approaches. Not a little bit because agile approaches could do more about it, but because, as I already said, it's more than the development approach. I think in the past there was a kind of a tendency to have exactly one way to go, and this one is, I think, the future will more about optionality. The more options you have, the more options you keep, the more flexible you are to react to the unforeseeable. And maybe some of you heard about from Heinz von Förster. Heinz von Förster is a Kubernetes guy, and he developed something which is called, he called it the ethical imperative. And he said always react, or always act in a way that the number of choices increases. Okay, this is not always possible, I agree, but as a kind of an idea to keep in mind, I think is very important. The typical tendency in projects is to take a choice, and if it's the wrong one, there is no way back. There is no fallback. There is no second possibility on the way available. Yeah. So, and this is something I think we have to be very, very flexible. And flexibility, of course, can be hindered or can be supported by organizational culture. But that maybe at the end of the day something else is delivered than originally thought is not per definition something wrong if there were good reasons to change. Yeah. Or even to plan for more money to build a prototype, or to do some, I don't know, experiments, etc., to have more options, pays back at the end of the day, from my point of view, in a complex world. But not necessarily the organization things that make sense, because there might be, I don't know, financial restrictions, or there is a kind of budget, but they just still want to keep the whole scope, etc., etc. I think flexibility in project management in general will be the main thing in the future. And of course, risk management, it's not only about risk management, but risk management is a part of it in decision making, etc., etc. In the way we are developing, in the way we are producing, in the way we are doing stakeholder management, we are dealing with our teams. Flexibility, optionality, and flexibility. This will change methodology. This will change the way we are dealing with projects in the future. The future is already there, but it will be. You will see it more than today. That's my prediction, and I don't think you need to be a genius for that prediction.
Marcus,
we're coming to the end of the session. Sorry. And I have put up here Mentimeter, so if there are any additional responses from the audience, please, would be great if you can answer the final question here. And that kind of, if I understood you correctly, Rüdiger, I mean, when it comes to AI and modern technology, etc., there probably, because of the predictability and those capacities or capabilities, that would be helpful, but there needs to happen something in parallel, at least, or upfront, right? Which is kind of as what you mentioned, right? Like flexibility, agility, etc., and develop more like this, more like proactivity. Is that correct, or would you see it the same way?
Absolutely, absolutely. I would not have, maybe I would not have voted on the term "we need urgent help,"
Mm,
but I would surely go for it makes sense, and I would like to have it fast. But if we don't have it fast, maybe in, I don't know, 10 years or five. No, 10 years is too long. Let's say in 5 years, I would not say the world will, I don't know, destroyed because of that. Yeah, but if the faster we can have it, from my point of view, the better it is. Yeah. So therefore, I would really love to have it. I would really love to have it soon. But I do, as I already mentioned, I do not believe that it really would resolve our challenges, but it would help to uncover hidden known unknowns. And this would be a great help, don't take me wrong, especially because we are all human beings with all the weaknesses and strengths. And but sometimes, from my point of view, I think weaknesses, these are, as I said, weaknesses in risk management. This is the entrance for the black swans in the organizations. I don't know. Some people, most people who have, I don't know, in risk in project management since a while maybe heard the name Tom DeMarco. He's a quite famous author on project management, and I once had the chance to listen to him on a conference in Paris, and somebody in the audience asked this guy, if you have to choose two disciplines within project management and the others you have to skip, which one would you take? So the answer was more about the importance between those, I don't know, you know them all, knowledge areas from the PMBOK. And without even thinking long, he immediately said stakeholder management and risk management. And the person asked back, why those? And he said, because these are the areas, or these are the knowledge areas where it's about no surprises, because nobody likes surprises. And this is, and I never forgot this because I think it's still valid. Yeah,
Yeah.
risk management and stakeholder management. This is, from my point of view, these are the main topics in project management. Yeah. So
Okay.
therefore, I would love to get it soon. Yeah.
Me
But this is
too.
my personal opinion. Okay. If somebody else has another opinion, that does not mean he's wrong or she's wrong. Of course not.
yeah.
It's just my personal experience.
Yeah, no, great, Rüdiger. I'm sure we could debate on this and discuss further for,
One last thing, Marcus.
yeah,
Somebody asked in the chat if there are any presentation slides are available.
right, right. Yeah, yeah, Mohammed. I mean, some may be expecting a presentation or slides, right? And usually, I'm sure, Rüdiger, you have some, or you would have some slides to present. But our format usually is a discussion or interview round, right? To basically get your feedback on certain questions
So
and
my
less a
my,
presentation.
my idea would be, if Mohammed could provide me his email address, or you might provide his email address, I can send him some slides about a speech I recently did last week on the IPMA World Conference, Marcus, where you have been too as a speaker,
Right.
on risk management. And of course, I would like to share these slides if Mohammed would be interested in that.
Yeah, Mohammed, good point. And for anybody else, right, who is interested, uh, I mean, if you're on meetup.com in the community, please put something in the comment section or send a message. I think you can send a message to the moderators here, to us. Then we get back to you and forward you the presentation from Rüdiger. Okay, I think we are already a little bit over, but it was, I think, very helpful, very insightful, and a lot of, as I said, we probably could discuss for another few hours. It's quite some interesting topic, and I'm sure we have some further discussions around this uncertainty and unknowns, and all in the context how we can resolve it with AI or not. So it's an interesting topic, and I'm sure we have some further sessions in the future where we elaborate on this further. For now, thank you very much, Rüdiger, for
You're
having
welcome.
you
It
here
was a
today.
pleasure.
And yeah, we hope to see everybody then in the next session. We will have our next meetup next month again. So watch out for our announcements, and then we see you all hopefully back again.
Thank
So
you,
thanks
everybody.
again, Rüdiger, and thanks everyone on the call or on the stream. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Ciao.